If you are a 12 by 12 scrapbooker, then you know sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to use 6 by 6 papers on your larger layouts. So today I want to give you a double page layout idea for using these smaller pages. I'm using the Full of Life DSP from Stampin' Up, and I have used this pack a ton. So I have some full sheets, but I also have quite a few scraps in here. These packs come with 48 sheets, so that gives you a ton to work with. And the reason I decided to grab this pack is because of the vibrant colors. I wanted to scrapbook. Last Easter we did some egg dyeing, and I figured that the colors in this pack would be the perfect match for all these vibrant eggs. Now, we tried a new way of dyeing eggs, and I'll explain that a little bit later, but it worked so well. You can see our eggs turned out very bright and really pretty. So I think we're gonna do that again this year, but I have some super cute pictures from that. And then I have a 5 by 7 as well. This was my favorite picture. It's just super cute. So I have a 5 by 7 and a bunch of 3 by 4s. I like to fit a lot of pictures on a 2-page spread, so that's what we're gonna do for this layout. Now, lots of times my go-to is the creative design team sketchbooks. And we actually have one that is meant for using 6 by 6 pattern papers. So there's lots of ideas in here to get you going on double page layouts using these smaller papers. But today I thought I'd try something different. One of my favorite things about 6 by 6 is that the patterns are smaller scale, which means you can cut them out with dies and they look a little bit better than maybe a larger scale print would. You see more of the print when you die cut it or punch it out with a punch. And so that's what I'm gonna do today, especially since I have a lot of scraps, a lot of smaller pieces left of this paper pack. I want to be able to use those to their full potential. So I've pulled some dies. I haven't actually decided what shape I want to cut my paper into yet, but I know I want to kind of have a scatter of shapes going across my layout. Depending on what I choose will depend how I kind of cluster them and arrange them on my page. So I have these wonky circles. These are really cool because typically when you see circle dies, they are standard circle. These ones are called Around It All dies. I will have everything that I'm talking about linked down below in the description for you guys. Then I was looking at hexagons. That is a classic, very popular to scatter hexagons across the page. It's nice because they have flat sides, so they're easy to kind of line up in a very uniform pattern. This is from the Meant to Be dies. And then this one I thought was kind of a fun take on a hexagon. And this is the Wildflower Designs dies. This one is actually in the last chance section and it is discounted. So if you don't have it and you think that looks kind of interesting, you might want to go check it out. I was thinking about the smallest one here. I like that it has the little piercing detail on it. And I could either make it go up like this vertically, or I could go this way and stack them up like that. One more option I found in my stash. This is from Close to My Heart, Decorative Shapes dies. And I thought these would be really fun to use because they have the flat sides. You can kind of line them up really nicely. There's also a scalloped square. And if you don't want to use any kind of dies, you could also just cut your paper into squares and do the same sort of design that I'm gonna do today. So as you can see, I do have some decisions to make, but I'm gonna go ahead, lay out my base pages, and then we can start figuring out what shape I'm gonna use. I'm going to start off my base with 12 by 12 white because I have a lot of color that I'm going to bring in. And I think if I start off with a colored base, it's just going to become too overwhelming. Just going to lay out my photos here first so I can get an idea of how everything is looking. What I want to have is my 5 by 7 here. And then I have a couple of landscape 3 by 4s. I'll just have to figure out kind of how I want these arranged, but I'm going to put them on this side. And actually, I want to do a third for journaling. So I'm going to put journaling, I think, in between these two. And then over on this side, I want to have my 3 by 4s, my portrait 3 by 4s. Now, I'm going to cut these down a little bit because I do want gaps between them. I don't want them stuck right up next to each other. So they're going to have to be thinner than 3 inches. Now, these are a little out of order. So maybe I want to put... Typically, because she's looking in, I would want to put that on the end. But in the order of how things are going, she's mixing the paints right here. And so I feel like maybe I should switch it up so that kind of comes first or earlier in the layout. Probably doesn't matter too much, but do something like that. Now I could include another 3x4 photo here, but I don't have another one that I want to use. They're kind of repetitive, and I think I've kind of covered everything that I wanted to here. So I'm going to make a journaling box to go in there that will take up the same amount of space. Now I know that I want to mat these, and what I'm thinking is one piece going down. So I do need to bring in some 12 by 12 paper so that I can get a full 12-inch strip. I want one running behind here and then another one running here. And then I'll also want to mat or double mat this main photo. So I was looking through my stash for ideas. I don't want anything too crazy colorful because I got a lot of color going on there. And then I'm going to have more color coming in from my pattern paper. And so I'm thinking I want something neutral and nothing too exciting. This is the Botanical Textures pack from Stampin' Up! And that's where this splatter print is from. And I was thinking, you know, that really fits the feel of what's going on here. It's grayscale, so it's not going to fight with any of the other colors. I also went into my stash and pulled out some of my close to my heart papers. I just have them organized by color. So I went into the grays to see if maybe there was a gray that could also work. And I thought this dot would actually work pretty well. And I do quite like that. So that is a good option. Now, I can't use a print like this because it's directional. I only have one sheet of it. And so if I cut it this way to make a strip coming down, I would want this little leaf pattern pointing up and down. But once I cut it, I won't have the paper going in the right direction to also cut a piece for over here. So that is out just because it's a directional print. Then I have this one. I have a couple sheets of it, but it's a floral, so it's kind of an all over print. And I think that could work as well. It's a pretty calm print. It's pretty subtle, and it's not going to fight with all the other color and pattern that's going on this page. So now it's just a matter of deciding what I think looks best. If I want to go that kind of more splattery route, there's not going to be a ton of it showing. I'm going to have some showing out the sides, a little bit kind of top and bottom. So it kind of depends on how much contrast I want. I do kind of like this polka dot, and I think this tone goes nicely with the color of my walls. And then this color really matches well with the muffin tin that we're using. So that's in almost all the pictures. So both are good options. It's too bad you guys aren't here live with me, and then you could vote on which one to use. I'm gonna go think on this, cut down my paper, and I will be right back. All right, I went ahead and stuck down my pieces. I decided to go with that darker splatter pattern from the Textured Botanicals paper pack. I just felt like it was more subtle, kind of blended in a little bit more. And then I went with black mats on my photos. I was debating white, but I have a lot of white going on elsewhere on the page, and I thought my photos are light enough that the black still adds some nice contrast between the colors and the white and like lighter colors in here. If my photos were quite a bit darker, I would have gone with white just to add that contrast. I kept it to 1/8 of an inch border, so that works out to about 1/16 of an inch all the way around, just enough to help pop those photos against the background. Now this piece is stuck down because I'm not sure exactly where I want it to go on this page yet. And that way I can move it around. I can tuck things underneath of it. Same thing on this side. These are stuck down. I'm leaving my big space here for my journaling. I'm probably going to type it on the computer, print it off, and cut it out for there. And I did go ahead and do a little dovetail on the bottom here. So this one is just about 1/4 of an inch smaller than my page, just to allow a little white around there. Now, when it comes to placement, I was debating on if I'm going to leave a little white gap or put it right up to the edge. And once I put my photo or my pages together, like they will sit in my post-bound albums, I think it looks better if I put it right over to the edge, and then I put this over here somewhere like that. I feel like if I have it a little bit separated and there's a white gap, it kind of looks a little bit strange. I don't know. I just wasn't quite happy with it leaving any amount of white space, even if I move it over more. I just felt like it looks strange once you put your pages together. I think if you are putting them into a D-ring album, it doesn't really matter because you're going to have space between your two sides anyways, usually quite a bit of space. So then you could leave some white there if you want to. I think that looks nice when they're separated. But since mine will sit together, I'm going to keep it like that. And then whatever space I have remaining, I'm just going to center my 5x7 on there once I'm ready to stick those down. But I want to get my shapes going and figure that out first before I commit to placement of these big pieces, because that might alter depending on the shapes and sizes and how many pieces I want to have. So I'm going to go ahead and die cut those. I am debating on doing these wonky circles. I like how they look. I did go ahead and cut a few pieces. These aren't necessarily where I would use them, but I wanted to cut some of the circles and see what I thought. I think they could work really good. And then I did cut a few of this elongated hexagon to see what that would look like. And I think I like the way this looks because we have those little white gaps in there, which gives it some room to breathe. If I do the circles, I guess I could have them sort of spread out, but I don't really like how that looks because it's not even. And I would tend to probably do more of a cluster if I was going to do circles. And also I'd probably want to ink my edges to add some more distinction for each shape. Whereas I don't feel like I need to ink edges when I use these. I have nice borders with the white in between. I mean, I could put them flush together, but I think they look better with some white. So I think that's making my decision for me. I'm going to go with this elongated hexagon shape and just cut it out of a bunch of different patterns from the Full of Life paper pack. All right, I have a whole bunch of hexagons here and I'm going to go ahead and start laying them out. I cut several different patterns. I didn't want to use too many that had a white background with the color on top. A lot of mine are solid, some I'm using up like little pieces, so they're not perfect, but I should be able to hide those no problem. And basically I just wanted a variety of patterns and colors to spread out around the page. So I want to start out by first laying out my pieces and then just seeing where everything is going to look good. And I know I want some to either come under here or over, something like that. I'll just have to play around a little bit, figuring out the exact placement, and if my photo needs to move, I kind of want this centered between the two sides so I have an even amount of white on each side. So while I place these pieces, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you about the egg dyeing process, doing it this way. This was something I found on an Instagram reel last year, and what you do is you hard boil your eggs and then you mix up your paints, and the paint is made up of baking soda. I think it's 1 tablespoon of baking soda and then 1 teaspoon of water, and then you use food coloring. Now I use the gel food coloring, like the Wilton gel food coloring. It's super pigmented and I used quite a bit of it, so the colors were super saturated, and I think that's what gave us such good results. Then you put your hard-boiled eggs into a muffin tin and you can go to town painting them. I think they look the best if you mix at least like a couple colors on the egg. So like paint part of it with one color and then leave some areas white and then go ahead and add another color on there. We got some really cool combinations with like blues and purples, pinks and blues, and yellow and green. So we had some very fun combinations in there, and you don't really know what they're going to look like until you're all done, which is kind of the fun surprise. Now you could be very particular if you have older kids and, you know, paint them on in kind of great detail, making designs and those kinds of things. But we were just slapping it on there and it was a ton of fun. Once you have them painted, then you just take a little bit of vinegar and pour them over each egg. We just did it one at a time because it's fun to watch the eggs all fizz up, and basically like a science experiment, and she enjoyed it so much. You've done the fizzing, you can just rinse off in case there's like some extra paint left on there that didn't fizz up. And then your eggs are done. You dry them off and put them in a bowl. And I think that was the most fun I've ever had dyeing Easter eggs. I have my hexagons placed. I am going to try and keep the same amount of white space between all of them as I go and glue them down. I'm not worried about anything hanging over the edges. I can always go back later and trim off anything that's hanging over. I like the flow of this, I could always add like another little piece here, but I don't want to make it too heavy. I think so far this has a good little flow to it, kind of comes over and then off this side. I'm going to go ahead, stick these all down. I'm going to stick down these pieces as well, and then I will come back and we can move on to doing some embellishing. I want to keep my embellishments relatively simple, so I'm going to go with flowers and greenery in small clusters. I grabbed this Thankful Garden set. It's a really cool set with layering, stencils, stamps, and dies. I'm actually just using this leaf die because it's a really nice one for filling out your clusters. And then I'm going to use the Impressions Abloom set, which is a new one that is coming out May 6th. So it's not quite out yet if you're watching this video right when it's publishing, but it has these fun kind of oval shapes. There's leaf dies, there's floral dies. I love that there's a large, medium, small flower, as well as the centers are separate for this. There are also the dies for the flowers are super smart, and the leaves, because they are separate. So you can use just the outline to cut out the stamp. And then the inside part you can slip into that outline, and then it will cut some details into it. So it's like having a standalone die and an outline die all in one. I think this is a brilliant concept, and you get kind of a 2-for-1. Each of these stamps has 2 layers, so I went ahead and mounted everything on blocks because there's going to be quite a bit of stamping. And then I need to pull some inks. So I looked at the colors that are in the paper pack to help me decide on inks. And I have Daffodil Delight and Timid Tiger. I'm going to use those 2 together. Timid Tiger is a new color that's just coming out. And then I have Melon Mambo and Pretty in Pink, Blueberry Bushel, and Balmy Blue. Basically, I wanted a light and a dark of each color. To do my stamping, I'm going to flip over my Versa mat. This is a retired mat from Close to My Heart, but it's really nice for stamping because the back side is spongy. So I'm just stamping onto white cardstock, and I'm going to start with my pink colors first. So Pretty in Pink as my light and Melon Mambo as my dark. I'm grabbing the solid layer and stamping it in the lightest color, and then I'm going to grab the detail layer and use the darkest color. I'm actually going to reverse that order with my next flower because it actually works better to do the darkest one first. So this is Timid Tiger and Daffodil Delight. Timid Tiger is going to be the detail layer, and then Daffodil Delight will be the more solid layer. And it really helps having that darker detail layer to help you line everything up. And then Blueberry Bushel for the dark and Balmy Blue for the light. The fun thing about this set is that there are also flower centers that are double layered. So there is a solid layer, which I'm going to stamp in Daffodil Delight, and then there's a detail layer, which I'm going to stamp in Crushed Curry. So I was not sure what color I wanted to use, but I grabbed this darker yellow color, and it actually worked out really well as my kind of shadow layer with the detail on it. Now I can line up my dies, and I'm just kind of spinning them around until I find the right direction, and then I'm washi taping them into place. Even though I have a magnetic plate in my Big Shot machine, I find when I'm doing multiple dies at once, it's just easier to add a little bit of washi tape. I am going to do more flowers than just these 3, but I wanted to show you how they stamp and how they come together. I'm going to do the rest off camera, and I am going to rotate the colors a little bit so that I have some variety when I'm building my clusters. I don't want the clusters to all be the same, and I think switching up the colors for different flowers will help with that. I'm also going to end up building my clusters off camera. I thought I was recording, but I wasn't. So here are my clusters. I will show you a little bit closer up. But now I'm going to stamp my title. This is from the Storybook Life scrapbooking set. So it has tons of good springtime title options. I loved this Hip Hop Hooray, definitely meant for Easter. And I thought it would fit around these hexagons really well. So I'm trying to figure out where I want it exactly. And then I thought about it and decided that I'm not willing to risk stamping this just freehand onto the background of my layout after I've stuck everything else on. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Tim Holtz stamping platform. One of the reasons I love this thing is because it's open on 2 sides. So you can stamp on your 12 by 12. It just hangs over the edge, which is no problem. And I'm going to use Blueberry Bushel since it is nice and dark. It will make my title pop, and it's one of the colors that's in the paper collection. I had to remove the magnet there because my door wouldn't close all the way. And I'm glad I used my platform because I need to restamp this. It didn't perfectly transfer. That is why I never regret using this thing, and especially when I'm stamping right onto the base of my layout. And I am going to stamp this 3 times in total because I just couldn't get it to transfer onto the H properly. But now it looks nice and dark. I'm grabbing my Elements of Text stamp and using the splatter that's in there. And I'm still going to use Blueberry Bushel, but I'm stamping off on a scrap piece first, so it's not the full strength. I use a little bit of 2nd and 3rd generation, so stamping off and then stamping again if I want a little bit lighter. And basically I'm just going around where my clusters are and I'm adding just that little bit of splatter. I think it goes really well with the whole painterly feel since we are dyeing eggs, and it just extends those clusters a little bit further. So here are the finished pages. You can see I added my typed journaling, and I also added a couple of typed strips. This one says imperfect and beautiful, which exactly that exemplifies these Easter eggs. They're definitely imperfect, but they are beautiful. I also added some rhinestones for a little bit of sparkle on these pages. And you can see the leaves that are in my clusters. Those are done in Granny Apple Green and Lemon Lime Twist. So I thought it'd be nice to have both of those greens, which do show up in this pattern paper. I love how my clusters are there. They add some embellishment, but they're not taking over the page. I tried to keep them fairly small, so they would just accent the page, but not distract from the photos. Now, if you're ready for another layout idea where I'm using shape dies to mix a lot of pattern papers together on one layout, it's also an Easter layout. So check that out here, and I will see you again very soon with another video.